Last night, we experienced possibly the craziest trade in NBA history. So crazy, in fact, that hours after it had been reported by multiple reliable sources, people still didn't believe it to be true. Luka Doncic is headed to LA to play with LeBron and the Lakers, and that's rightfully been the headline of pretty much all of the talks. But I'm most intrigued by the Dallas side of things and what this means for the Mavericks moving forward. Now, I want to be very clear. If you view this trade through a forward-looking lens or think about the future literally at all, it's likely that we'll never have an answer for why the Mavs made this move. Luka's undoubtedly a top 5 player on the planet, has made 5 straight All-NBA first teams, and is only 25 years old. The general manager of the Mavs, Nico Harrison, said that he believes defense wins championships. So go get some defensive players to surround your generational offensive player with. It's also been reported that Luka's weight became a serious problem, and they were worried about his conditioning with a supermax extension on the horizon. It could be a valid concern, but I'm still trusting my 25-year-old franchise cornerstone who just led me to the NBA Finals. There's really only one scenario to me that makes any sense. Luka's contract expires in 2026, and it's possible that they felt he wasn't going to re-sign, so they rushed to get a win-now player. Still, even that is hard to wrap my head around because they easily could have shopped him out to the league and probably gotten a much larger return. That's all in the past though. Like I said, we might not ever have a clear or reasonable answer as to why the Mavs traded Luka, but it's done and over with, so all we can do is look forward. And if I'm being completely honest, I'm actually a really big fan of Dallas's current roster. It's quite literally impossible to recreate Luka's on-ball creation. The isolation scoring, the pick and roll mastery, the all-time great passing, that's a one-of-one player that you won't find anywhere else, so to me this move signifies a very clear shift in approach. A little over a week ago, AD was interviewed by Shams, and in that interview he expressed his desire to play the 4 next to a true big man. Well, the Lakers took those desires seriously because they shipped him to a team that has 2 of them. Derek Lively's hurt at the moment, so I'm gonna focus on Daniel Gafford, who's one of the most athletic 5s in the league. On offense, he's a massive above-the-rim threat in every way imaginable. Out of pick and roll, he's a massive lob target. Out of the dunker spot, he's an elite vertical spacer. And when operating down low, he's also one of the game's best offensive rebounders who will put it back up for automatic points. More on that in a second though, cause it's the defense that's most interesting. Gafford's combination of size, length, timing, and verticality makes him one of the very best shot blockers in the league who can completely alter an offense's ability to score at the rim as long as he's in position. The thing is, he can sometimes struggle defending the pick and roll. His positioning and drop is pretty shaky, he doesn't really have the foot speed to step out and play at the level, and he isn't all that switchable. So when teams put him in the primary action consistently, that rim protection sort of gets nullified. And that's where Davis comes in, because for years now, he's been arguably the best pick and roll defender in the NBA, and really one of the best we've ever seen. He's elite in drop coverage with the positioning and shot blocking ability to deter shots at an incredibly high level. He does have the foot speed to jump out to the perimeter in a hedge or a trap with the ability to recover and make plays in the paint. Then of course he's on a short list of the most switchable bigs we've ever seen, bringing some newfound versatility to the squad. If you remember the 2022 Celtics, I think this Mavs team will have a similar approach to the defensive side of the ball. Robert Williams III struggled to defend the pick and roll against elite guards, so they did everything in their power to keep him on the baseline as a roamer, while Horford instead defended the primary action. You can do very similar things with AD in the action and Gafford playing free safety, and maybe even a little more because of AD's unique versatility. And keep in mind, they still have PJ Washington on the roster, another guy who can defend multiple positions, protect the rim, and rebound, so we're looking at a pretty intriguing front court trio. Washington, Davis, and Gafford instantly becomes one of the best rebounding and rim protecting front courts we've seen in a very long time. The amount of size, length, and athleticism is almost hard to imagine, and that's without sacrificing speed because PJ and AD can both step out and defend in space. Even the best offenses in the NBA should have a hard time putting pressure on the rim, and they'll have a much harder time securing second chance opportunities. So if there's a silver lining here, it's that the Mavs just became arguably the second or third best defensive team in the league. That isn't just a result of the front court though. One thing that's being overlooked in this trade is that the Mavs also got Max Christie, who's emerged this season as one of the better point of attack guards in the NBA. They still have Najee Marshall, a versatile wing defender that can pretty much switch 1 through 3, and I'd make the argument that a couple other rotation guys like Kyrie and Grimes aren't major liabilities capable of at least treading water. It's also worth noting that if any of these guys get beat by their man, there's always going to be a rim protector, or maybe 2, or maybe even 3 in position to help. So they should be more than comfortable switching anyone onto the ball, knowing that they have guys behind them to make plays. That will allow them to stagnate ball movement heavy offenses, forcing them to operate a lot more one-on-one, and this defensive personnel with the playoff coaching of Jason Kidd really piques my interest. As for the offense, it's a pretty obvious concern that AD and Gafford might have trouble coexisting because neither are really traditional floor spacers. There will definitely be some clunky moments, but I think they can find ways to utilize both. I mentioned Gafford's ability to space the floor vertically. As long as he's on the floor with AD, I'd expect him to spend most of his time in the dunker spot, waiting for lobs or opportunities to get on the offensive glass. That means AD's the one in the primary action, which will probably be lots of pick and roll or dribble handoff play, where he's still one of the biggest scoring threats in the league. Sure, defenses with elite rim protection might be able to take away some rolling opportunities, in particular the lob, but AD's a unique player in that a lot of his scoring is done in the short mid-range area with jumpers and floaters off of quick shovel passes. Considering that both Kyrie and Klay's best reads as playmakers is the shovel pass, that fits like a glove, and the question will be whether or not AD can consistently make short roll reads to take advantage of Gafford in the dunker. If so, I think the two can have a pretty similar dynamic to that of Evan Mobley and Jarrett Allen in Cleveland. Mobley's improved the 3-ball enough to become reliable, but is still only good for 1 or 2 3-point attempts a game. He spends most of his time operating along the baseline as a cutter, while Allen makes reads out of the short roll to punish helping defenders. Of course, the big difference is that the Cavs have 2 lead ball handlers instead of just 1, and like I said, there's no replacing Luka's playmaking, so I do think the offense will have its very low moments. In my opinion, the goal is to overwhelm teams with size as much as possible. AD and Gafford are both huge interior scoring threats who dominate the offensive glass. One of the best ways to counteract a lack of playmaking and spacing is to control the possession game. PJ is also a pretty big mismatch problem with his low post game, so if he's consistently getting a team's 3rd largest defender, that could be a tough matchup. After all that's worked out, the biggest question then becomes who the 5th starter is. Before last night, I would have said Klay Thompson because of the optics, but they just traded Luka Doncic, so I don't think optics are a factor. Max Christie's the best option if they want more defense, and he's also a reliable spot-up 3-point shooter. But in my opinion, the biggest need with those 4 is more perimeter creation, so I'd go with a ball handler. That leaves you with a choice of Jaden Hardy, Spencer Dinwiddie, or Quentin Grimes. Dinwiddie's clearly the best playmaker of that group, and I wouldn't be surprised if he gets the start for that reason. If it were up to me though, I think I'd go with Quentin Grimes, as not only is he the best 3-point shooter of the 3, He's also the most explosive slasher, especially off the catch, and he's probably the one who holds up best defensively. A starting five of Kyrie, Grimes, PJ, Davis, and Gafford certainly has its flaws, but it also has its strengths. They are elite at rebounding on both sides of the ball. They have unrivaled rim protection, they have two very high-level shooters, and a third who's a bit streakier but can sometimes get hot. The playmaking is a serious concern, and certain playoff defenses won't have much difficulty taking away a lot of their scoring opportunities or forcing turnovers. But I mentioned earlier that this move signifies a clear shift in approach. That approach is to hopefully overwhelm every opponent they run into with size and athleticism. In the game of basketball, there really isn't a way to game plan for size and athleticism, so in the mind of Nico Harrison, I'm sure he views this as a more playoff viable roster. Remember how Boston's chess piece in the finals was to put Tatum on the 5 and switch every action? You can't do that with a post scorer of AD's caliber on the floor. OKC's probably the team to beat right now, and arguably their biggest weaknesses are size and rebounding. Maybe they think this gives them a bigger advantage. If they run into Denver, now they have multiple bodies to throw at Jokic and can implement a similar strategy to what Minnesota did last year when they used one of their bigs as a free safety. And then you also have to think about Cleveland. Now you have two bigs to throw at Mobley and Allen and really take away one of their biggest advantages. Speaking of the Mobley and Allen dynamic, another thing I think the Mavs can pull from them is the way they stagger their rotations. Those two guys start and close games together, but for every minute in between, it's almost always one of the two on the floor as a lone big. I'd expect the Mavs to do a similar thing, using AD as the 5 with the bench unit and running more offense through him as a post-up guy. Then in the other minutes, I'd expect Kyrie and Gafford to pretty much always share the floor, as they've built some awesome chemistry in the two-man game. One last thing I'd like to mention is that the possibility of more deals is still on the table. If they need another creator, Colin Sexton's out there. If they want some more shooting without giving up size, Cam Johnson's still on the table. I don't really know what to expect at this point from a team who just traded their franchise cornerstone, but I can't wait to see how it all plays out. Again, I want to keep reiterating that this move really didn't make any sense for the Mavs, especially if you look at it from a long-term perspective. In the short term, did they even get better? Only time will tell, though I do think the roster they've put together poses some really interesting challenges for every top-tier contender. The lack of creation worries me, so I definitely don't view them as an inner circle type of team. And all of this only matters if they're able to stay healthy, which is a pretty big if. But as a sneaky dark horse contender, I still think the Mavs are in the mix, and if I were a Western Conference playoff team, I really wouldn't want to see them in a series. If you enjoyed this breakdown, make sure to drop a like, subscribe, and turn my post notifications on to be first on more content. If you're interested in my more in-depth research, make sure to check out the Hoop Venue podcast and my social media profiles. You can find those links in the description. Feel free to let me know down in the comments what you think of the trade. As always, I hope you all have a great day, and I'll catch you guys in the next one.